6:31, calling to order Trophy Club Mud One Board of Directors meeting. All directors are present. We do have a quorum. Citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the board on any matter, whether or not it's posted on the agenda. The board is not permitted to take action or discuss any comments made to the board at this time concerning an item not listed on the agenda. The board will hear comments on specific agenda items prior to the board addressing those items. You may speak up to 4 minutes or the time determined by the president or presiding officer. To speak during this term, you must complete a speaker's form that includes the topics of your statement. Citizens' comments should be limited to the matters over which the board has authority. I see that we have one request for someone to speak. Ma'am, would you like to come forward? When you come forward, please state your name and your address, and then share with us your concerns or comments you'd like to make.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Cepeda. I live at 1040 Trophy Club Drive. My house has been damaged by the breakage of a water pipe. I have a major issue in my home. My insurance company is declining the claim, because they say that this damage was done by the city and they should be responsible for it. I'm collecting now estimates, and they are very, very high. The replacement of the driveway, I have received quote as low as $20,000, as high as $30,000 just for the driveway. The interior of my house was damaged and was partially clean. And when I say partially, is the water was extracted after the house was underwater for more than a couple hours, but the walls, nothing was done to the walls. They were left the way, they let the water penetrate. The wood has absorbed all that water, and now when I have one of the construction guys opening one of the walls just to see what's behind there for estimates, the whole insulation is black in one wall. And this is just in one room. I don't know what is wrong with the rest of the house. That fellow quotes a replacement, demolish and replacement cost of $30,000. Then he's also saying that my foundation is damaged. So I am waiting for written estimates, but I'm here to ask the board, actually strongly demand that the board becomes accountable for the damage. It's not possible that a water pipe breaks and then I'm told, sorry, we cannot do anything about it. It's not acceptable. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much, ma'am, for coming to speak with us. And someone will be getting in contact with you. Thank you. Okay, are there any other citizen comments?
No.
Okay, we'll move on to the first item, consent agenda. All matters listed as consent agenda are considered to be routine by the board of directors and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. We have consider and take appropriate action to approve the consent agenda. A, September 2018 check register. B, September 17, 2018 regular meeting minutes. C, tax collection report, fourth quarter FY 2018. And D, quarterly investment report, fourth quarter FY 2018. Is there any items that anyone prefer to have removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through D as you just outlined. September 2018 check register, September 2017, 2018 regular minutes, tax collections report, fourth quarter fiscal year 2018, and D, quarterly investment report, fourth quarter fiscal year 2018.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Secretary Treasurer Flynn.
I second it.
We have a second by Director Chapman. All in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now enter into regular session. Introduction to the new wastewater superintendent, Frank Isola. Staff?
Mr. President, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Frank Isola to the Board of Directors. Frank has been chosen as our new wastewater treatment plant superintendent as of a few weeks back. He's getting a drink out of the fire hose in terms of learning on the job, but I wanted to bring him here tonight and introduce him and then cut him loose so he doesn't have to sit here and listen to all of us for the rest of the evening. We have another rain event on the way and our concerns about high flows coming to the wastewater plant. Frank, ironically, was already a member of our staff on the water side of the house, and in a competitive pool of candidates, he rose to the top and was offered the position, which he accepted. Mike, I don't know, since Frank reports directly to you, if you want to add anything to that synopsis before we let Frank say hello, but by all means, please do so if you'd like.
No, the only thing I will add, so Frank has been on the job since October 1st, and the only thing I can say, what I've seen from his experience and directing staff over there at the wastewater plant, I am very happy with the way everything is going.
Frank, do you have any words?
I'd just like to thank Carmen and Mike, Stephen, and anybody else who had a decision in giving me the opportunity to work here. I greatly appreciate it, and I'm going to give you guys everything that I have to make this the best place to be, to live, to work, and I love it. I love it here. So I'm going to just try and do my best every day.
Oh, thank you for that. Vice President Rose, you have a comment?
I have a quick question about licenses or certificate levels. How are we on those with TCEQ?
We're good.
We're good with all that?
Yes.
Good. Welcome
Yes.
aboard.
Well, welcome, and the only thing I would say, if they're going to have you drinking out of holes, make sure it's coming from the water side, not the wastewater side. Okay. Anyone on the left?
Malcolm, no, sir.
Okay. Item number 3, receive presentation and update from Lee Hodge, P.E., and Half and Associates regarding the design and construction of water transmission line to the elevated water tank located on T.W. King Road.
Good evening. My name is Leah Hodge, and I'm an engineer for the Interconnect Waterline Projects. Just real quick, I'll go review the purpose. We'll go through the alignment in a little bit more detail. We'll go over what easements. Sorry.
Someone's trying to get your attention.
Just one thing, Leah, we've laid her map out on this table over here for those of us who are struggling with visual acuity. Sometimes a bigger format is helpful.
Okay.
We'll review the easements that we're going to need to acquire in order to install this water line. Go over a summary of the cost estimate and an update on the project schedule. So the purpose is to basically be able to keep the eastern elevated storage tank full during the summer. Right now, that's not possible. So the solution to that is to upsize the line connecting the pump station to the storage tank. And so that's the purpose of this project. The modeling was all done prior to this project. This project is just to design the line itself and get it constructed. So we looked at quite a few alternatives. The blue and red is what we came up with. The blue lines are currently under construction. I don't know if you see the cursor. Right here, right outside, this line is in the ground. This is phase 1. They're not completely done with the project, but the water line is in the ground. I believe it's operational. The town center development put in the other segment of the blue line, and then the part that's currently under design is the whole red portion. So the alignment in a little bit more detail. So we start at the southeast corner of the town center development, and we connect their existing line with a proposed 16-inch line. And you can see in the little cross-section at the top that we're currently planning on putting it between the TxDOT sound wall that just went in and Encore's overhead transmission lines in that area. We're working with Encore to see if that's feasible, to see if they're gonna allow us in their easement. If not, our alternative alignment would be to go right behind TxDOT's back of curb there. And that's also tight there, but we're trying to figure out the best place to put it. We're trying to coordinate with Encore and TxDOT and see what they're gonna allow us to do.
Leah, can you point that out with your cursor, what the,
So right here
right?
is currently where we're proposing it, but we may have to move it over here where this red circle is.
When will that be determined?
Hopefully soon. I've been talking to Encore and I've gotten some feedback from them. TxDOT, I'm still waiting to hear back from them.
Okay.
And so this applies to the whole segment right next to the residential development right there. So moving to the east, just behind the Church of Christ, we're able to get out of Encore and TxDOT's easement. You can see the bend, and we have a pretty clear area right there, which is this segment. Then we bend to the north and come up beside the apartments.
Just briefly, in that where it says proposed 16-inch right there,
Yes.
behind the church,
Yes.
there's a significant drop off there. Or are you going to you're going to go down the hill and down in,
We'll be downhill.
okay.
Correct. And then we'll turn to the north and run along the side of the apartment homes. There will be a 12-inch connection from our 16-inch line to the line that's existing in Indian Creek Drive.
Okay.
Behind the apartments, there are 2 lanes to that driveway back there. One is actually a drive lane, and then to the north, there's kind of a parking lane that's striped off for parking spaces. We're planning on putting our line beneath the pavement of that parking lane. So the pavement will be torn out, the line will be put in, and then we'll replace the pavement. Yes.
Just for those who aren't so familiar, we're showing that red interconnection to the existing line. I presume that there will be adequate isolation valving to provide us with the ability to shut down the line and say a Trophy Club in a certain place and run water backwards for operability and construction purposes.
Yes. We do have a tight spot on the east end of the apartment complex. One of the buildings is really close to the property line, so we're planning on boring through there and past the fence and the big tree that's right at the corner of the hospital property. So that will be a bore.
How significant would that be?
The bore? Not very. It's common.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know what it is, but how
Distance?
long
It'll
is it?
probably
Yeah.
be 120 feet, somewhere in there. I think I have it laid out at 100, and we may extend it a little bit more to get around that large tree I was talking about.
Okay.
I'll just add one thing. The good thing about going behind these apartments, we have an existing 8-inch water line there right now. So we're just kind of trying to stay in that same easement, maybe adding just a little more to our existing easement.
Okay.
Right, yeah, this will run parallel to an 8-inch line that's already back there. But I think the
Is it-
8-inch line is underneath the retaining wall and everything that's back there, so we can't really replace it. We're gonna have to go parallel to it.
Do we know if that 8-inch line is AC?
It is not.
Okay, so it's not so critical whether we get next to it or not. Okay.
So continuing to the east, there's the next property we come upon is the Trophy Club Medical Plaza property. And we're just staying on the north side of that. We will be getting new easements. We will be running parallel to the 8-inch line that's there also. And again, we're making another connection to Indian Creek right here with a 14-inch. And then on the east side of the Medical Plaza, we will be replacing the 8-inch with a proposed 12-inch here, and that will connect to an existing 12-inch that goes underneath 114 currently. I forgot to mention where the 14-inch connection to Indian Creek is. We will then switch from a 16 to an 18-inch line. So from that point east, we're installing an 18-inch line. And again,
Just raises the question, why?
that had to do with the modeling.
Okay.
I think,
Well, I understand water runs both ways in the pipe, so that may be part of
right,
it.
I think part of the reason is because where the 16-inch line is, we do have the parallel 8-inch line
Okay.
that serves at some capacity. Once we get further to the east, We no longer have a parallel line, so that may have been part of the reason why it needed upsized to 1018.
Okay.
And again, we continue to the east along the back of that property.
Leah, could I interject one thing?
Yes.
Just for the board's information, CP&Y, our other engineer selected by our board of directors, actually did the water modeling. So they've installed all of our water model into a computer software set. And as HAF was doing the design, we did ask them to do a model run based on the proposed numbers.
Okay.
And again, we stay to the north of these properties. When we get here, there's an existing easement, so we're going to stay in that existing easement. There is a water line, an existing water line coming from the neighborhood. Right here that we will make a connection to. And we're replacing, this segment right here has an existing 12-inch, and we're upsizing that to an 18. We will then bore underneath Trophywood Drive, and I think that's, again, about a 100-foot bore. So we won't have to disturb traffic on Trophywood Drive. We'll go to the north for a short stretch along Trophywood Drive, and then we will stay on the north side of the Trophy Club Town Hall. And again, there's a 12-inch line there that we will be replacing with an 18-inch. And we'll take that all the way around to the eastern elevated storage tank.
Okay.
Any other questions on the alignment? So the yellow highlighted areas are where we're going to need to acquire additional easements. There are 8 of them total. The first one is it's a very little small corner of the church property. The second one is from a little sliver of property that's between the apartments and the church right there. Number 3 will be from the apartment complex. 4 and 5 are from the medical plaza. It's actually 2 separate property owners, so there'll be 2 separate easement documents for that. 6 is from the Homewood Suites property. 7 is from the vacant property where I believe there's a parking lot going in now. And then 8 is a little piece from the town hall property. And the total easement area is about 39,000 square feet.
So what is the process for getting all of those easements?
Right now, we have them laid out. We will get the documents put together, exhibits that go with them. We will get the properties appraised, and then our right-of-way team will actually go negotiate and acquire the easements. And it's about a 6-month process.
And Steve, I'm sorry. Just from a legal perspective, an offer will be made and certain information communicated to the landowners. They'll attempt to undertake a negotiation. If the landowner refuses to do so, then the district can initiate condemnation proceedings.
Yeah, that's where I was headed. What happens if
So that would come back to the board, and if you make the requisite findings about a public necessity for the project, then we can initiate condemnation. Hopefully that's not necessary.
Yeah, I see that you show the easement behind Trophy Club Town Hall as red, and therefore not needing to be acquired. Based on my discussion with you, it's my understanding that we had an interlocal agreement with the town in which after they developed the town hall, they would dedicate that easement, but there's no evidence that it in fact was dedicated. So in terms of the width of the easement, is there sufficient room to have parallel pipes in that alignment based on your understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
And I believe that pipe will probably be abandoned. The existing 12-inch will be abandoned whenever the 18-inch goes in there.
Okay, so we're going to abandon it and
Correct.
go down to 1. Okay, thank you.
So the estimated project costs, my cost estimate came to about $2,700,000. We do have a contingency in there still, since we're still fairly early in the design and we have some questions left to be answered. So our approximate construction estimate right now is about $3 million. Engineering services is about $360,000. There's about $120,000 to actually acquire the easements, and that's to prepare the documents and all that kind of thing. Construction inspection services of about $100,000. The approximately $400,000 is to actually compensate the property owners for the easements. There's an amount in there for construction materials testing. And then the issuance cost fee that's there is for the actual bond. And that brings the total project cost to about $4.4 million.
I have a question on the total cost. We hired, or the MUD hired, an engineering firm to oversee the construction of the plant. Will we need to do the same type of thing with this?
That's what's in there. It's
Already in there?
Construction inspection services, the
Okay.
103,000.
Okay,
It's built in.
all right, okay, thank you.
I would add that I insisted on that. The MUD staff has historically done its own inspection work. When you look at plastic pipes, whether they're fiberglass, PVC, or what have you, and they get up to this scale, proper bedding and compaction is the most critical thing to maintaining circularity, for lack of a better word. And, Mike's a busy guy. He just doesn't have the time to go out and do that sort of thing. And to some extent, that becomes a geological engineer sort of thing.
Okay.
So I have insisted on that for a project of this scale.
Thank you.
So I understand that contingency of 10%, that's kind of a rule of thumb, I guess we've used before, we get that. But that's just on the construction subtotal. Is there no need for any contingency in any of the others? If I do my math, it's about 1.5 million, or is those pretty solid?
Most of those should be pretty solid. We try to be conservative also on the property values and things like that, so hopefully this is a conservative number.
Mr. Flynn, I'd like to address that slightly. As we started this project, we were in the 20% contingency range. And as you go through design, it's kind of like going to the optometrist and they're turning the dials. As you get closer to your actual visual acuity, that number should come down, and it has. I would expect to be somewhere between 5 and 10 at the final design number.
Has any of this cost been incurred? Because I know some things we've been doing along. And so how much of this cost have we already paid?
This is for the the red part of the interconnect project, so this does not include the blue part.
So this is all net new costs?
Correct.
Okay.
Although, to answer your question, we have been paying part of half's design fee, which is,
Correct.
oh man, 357,000. We're maybe 50, 60% of the way into design. A significant portion of that fund has been paid.
Okay. Would that be the only funds that have been expended toward this project? So roughly 180,000. And
I believe some of the right-of-way acquisition services have probably been paid because that's a subcontractor to half. Is that correct? You've had folks out doing surveying and marking trees and exciting people as a result, so.
I can chime in here a little bit when it comes to the number side. So prior to this, back in fiscal year 17, we had some expenses at that time, which would be tree surveys, postings, listings like that. That came to roughly about 40,000. We've done, let's see, I'm showing, we did about 300,000 what I have right now coming out total.
so that part of that 300 would be some of their engineering costs plus some of the other right-of-way stuff that's been previously mentioned.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Stephen, none of that was in phase one, was it? Because we really have this project bifurcated into two pieces
I've got multiple. I got phase one and phase two and different things.
from 2017.
I've got. I could be wrong. This is where I've got Lamanda within phase one.
Phase one.
Phase one, yeah, that's 99,000. Then I've got a few little small other phase ones on top of that. But nothing.
Because I was thinking, I can remember doing the tree survey, but I thought it was only for phase one.
That would have been for phase
Yes,
one.
it was for phase one.
Okay.
However, we have had the surveyors from the easement acquisition folks go out and tie ribbons around certain trees, which got everyone excited, including the town, because some of those trees were behind town hall, and we said, no, this doesn't determine that a tree is going to be removed or not.
Correct.
We were really inventorying was it the breed of tree or the,
Well, I don't even think we've done that. I think they just flagged the ones that they had surveyed, so we could go back and identify them if need be later. But it has no significance as to whether or not they're going to be removed at this time.
Was it a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree? No.
Any other questions about costs?
No, ma'am?
The project schedule, I met with Mike and Carmen last week to kind of go over the 50% design, and they're continuing to look at it closer, and they're going to get back with me with comments they have or changes they want to make. We're going to allow a couple of months to get our project to 95%, and in that time, we'll address their comments, refine everything, hopefully get a decision from Encore and TxDOT as to where our alignment's going to go in that area, and we'll be getting close to having final plans then. We plan to advertise in March, and then hopefully begin construction in May, and that gives us about 6 months to hopefully acquire the easements we need also.
So the easement acquisition will begin in the May 2019 timeframe?
No, it'll begin soon.
Okay,
We're
I
working on
was,
the- Yeah, so that ball's gonna get rolling, and hopefully we'll have them acquired by then.
okay. I
So it's-
thought you were saying it would be May as,
No,
so I
no,
would have hoped for a much more expeditious process
correct,
than
correct.
that.
No, we're starting that process now, so hopefully it will be completed in May.
Okay.
And that's all I have. As I mentioned, there's a printout over there if you wanna look at anything in more detail, but do you have any more questions right now?
Mr. President, I'd like to address your last question in terms of easement acquisition. So when we had our financial advisor here at the last board meeting, we did chat briefly about the dynamics of when the bond is issued to pay for this project versus when we can start things like easement acquisition, right? That's pulling money out of pocket. Unless there's a dramatic spike up in bond interest rates, it occurs to me and most everyone I've talked to that we should defer that bond issue until we need it and to purchase those easements from reserves, and then reimburse ourselves, which will be a part of that bond issuance declaration. But it is a dynamic in this project. So, to some extent, once you go out and start acquiring those easements, you are in fact hitting the point of no return, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say based on the last Fed testimony, it appears that there's an inclination for continual rate hikes as we go into 2019. So I would expect interest rates to continue to increase.
What again was the easement acquisition cost? Was that 380,000?
That was the actual acquisition cost, not
That was
including
actually
their,
what-
That was
That's-
compensation to property owners.
Yeah.
Yes, it was,
Yeah.
we assumed $10 per square foot
Okay,
for the time being for that.
but that doesn't include the cost, the administrative cost of
Correct,
doing
I
it?
think
that
that
was
just
103.
Okay,
Correct. No, it was 121 approximately.
okay.
It's went up in the time from that slide to now.
Yeah.
Well, we have
Copy
one
that,
more
please.
easement than we previously
Yeah.
did.
Okay.
I presume this presentation will be a part of board minutes, is that correct?
I was just wanting to get a copy of the financial side of it.
And the cost estimate should be in your packet also.
Well, I
I
guess
think.
so, but it's not nice and neat
Yeah, I
as
just,
what
I
you
had a summary
presented.
in the presentation.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I
Any
have.
Just the
additional
bottom
questions?
part? Okay. Just the bottom part.
Thank you, Leah. We
Thank you,
appreciate
Ms.
your work.
Sock. Okay, item number 4, consider and take appropriate action regarding approval of acquisition of a 2019 Dodge 1500 quad cab truck for the water department to be purchased through the buy board contract at Grapevine Dodge Chrysler Jeep for an amount of $26,571. Staff?
What this is, we have a 2011 Ford right now that is a take-home truck for the guys when they are on call. This is just to replace it. We're replacing them at 8 years, 80,000 miles. Right now, it's only 7 years old with 70,000 miles, but I wanted to get this out there and ordered. It takes about, from the date we order it, usually takes around 3 months or a little bit longer to get it, because they don't start making it until we order it, because we are on a buy board contract with them, because we're a government entity. So I just wanted to run this up and get the ball rolling on this.
So just a curiosity question. We don't just acquire vehicles that are in inventory. We have them make them
Have to
for
go
our,
through a buy board contract.
and that requires that they
That
manufacture
requires-
it at the time, after
Yes. We get a huge price break on them, so
okay.
Is that tied in with the town count, the town as well?
I'm sure the town can use buy board also.
Yeah.
I don't know how they order their
I
vehicles,
think
but,
last I heard, they go through Enterprise to do something a little different than what we can do.
oh, do they?
The rental company?
They do, as far as my understanding, I was talking to Amber before, they do some sort of rotational thing with it, or at least that's what they're working on right now, some sort of rotational bill.
Interesting,
Almost like a line of credit and just rotate out vehicles, from my understanding. Could be wrong, but that's what I was told last time.
interesting.
Something we can't do. We have to stick with what we have.
Director
So
Chapman, you have a comment?
Just a question on what, I'm not trying to diss what, the guys need and that stuff, but there's about $1,000 for Popular Equipment Group and remote start on that truck.
Okay, so the remote start comes stock. What we do now, we make sure that our trucks have Bluetooth because everybody's got cell phones. You don't want them driving with a cell phone, and we put a backup camera on them.
Okay. I did,
Yeah.
just, when it says Popular Equipment Group, it's like,
That's
Well, it's-
how
yeah, I mean, we're not
manufacturers put
buying-
everything together and
No.
you buy it or
We're
you
not buying
don't.
like a big fancy stereo, with a 6-disc CD
that's-
changer and all that stuff. It's a pretty,
that's all I'm
I've-
checking.
my truck that I drive now is about the same truck. I mean, they went up a little bit. I think I paid $23,500 for mine. It's the exact same
Yeah.
truck.
Can we just have your truck?
Yeah.
And he wants the new one.
I'll trade you for your Mercedes.
There you go.
Now you're talking.
I just wanted to touch bases for the board's general information. You might look at this and say, well, 8 years and 80,000 miles, that's not a lot of miles. But you need to understand that these vehicles go out there and sit and idle. So it may say 80,000 on the mileage, but engine time on that could be an incredible amount more. So that's just one of the things to look at, wear and tear on the engine tranny in those
It is.
situations.
And this is why I want to get this started right now, because the one I'm replacing, it's having some transmission issues. So I think I've got like $28,000 budgeted for this truck, because usually we'll bring them in, we'll put stickers on them, and then we'll put a set of emergency lights on them.
So that's cost in addition to the
That's in addition.
26,571.
This is just for the base vehicle.
Is that, those other funds included elsewhere in the budget?
It's included with the truck, so everything will be capitalized with this truck. So everything in the budget and everything, we'll go put emergency lights on it, we'll put stickers on it, it'll all be capitalized as one item.
Okay.
But that's in addition to the
In
26,571.
addition, I have $28,000 budgeted for this vehicle.
Vice
I-
President Rose?
I move to approve the acquisition of a 2019 Dodge 1500 quad cab truck for the Water Department to be purchased through buy board contract with Grapevine Dodge Chrysler Jeep for amount not to exceed $26,571.
I think he's saying the total cost, once they do everything, is.
No, this is fine. You
That
guys just
includes
need to
the
approve this.
5251.
The other ones, the only reason I need you guys to approve this, because it's over 25,000.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice President Rose to approve the acquisition of a 2019 Dodge 1500 quad cab truck for the Water Department through the buy board contract with Grapevine Dodge Chrysler Jeep in amount not to exceed $26,571. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Director Castaway. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by raising your hand.
It's the Dodge part that's hurting me.
Motion
Okay.
passes with the cheapskate, Vice Secretary Treasurer Flynn reluctantly. Motion passes unanimously.
Let it be noted that Secretary Flynn is looking for a vehicle to ride in the parade next year in, so.
Oh, well, given his reluctance to approve this one, that's not approved in this vehicle. Item number 5, discussion and public, possible action regarding access to wastewater treatment plant during rain event. Staff?
Mr. President, on September 21st and 22nd of September, we had a very significant rainfall event here in the town of Trophy Club, and particularly at the wastewater treatment facility. We estimate in those 2 days we had approximately 10 inches of rain at the wastewater plant. Obviously, that's, it's not the same at every location within Trophy Club, but a very significant rainfall event indeed. Stormwater events are generally measured in terms of statistical probability, and you'll hear on the stormwater front design engineers talking about designing to the 100-year flood. what's the amount of water we would expect in a rainfall event that we would only expect on a 100-year interval? Well, again, that is a statistical statement, and you can have in two succeeding days 100-year storm events. Nonetheless, when we had that event back in September, our staff struggled to make it to the wastewater plant. And as you saw in the general manager's report, which we'll cover later, we had a significant sanitary sewer overflow at the wastewater plant itself, resulting from the high volume of flow that approached the plant on that day. It turns out that some of our folks who live in other communities responding on an on-call basis to that event struggled to get here because of flooding of streets. So there's always cautionary tales that come out. Anytime there's a significant rainfall event, don't drive when you see water. Don't go through there. It's my understanding we had a few of those events here in Trophy Club proper, where at least one person down here on, I want to say that's Marshall Creek Branch, right behind the Tom Thumb, managed to drive into it and get their car pinned up against the railing. A significant flooding event down there. We had similar issues on the other end of town, and down near the intersection of Skyline and Indian Creek, there is a culvert that goes under, and that road was entirely underwater. Our folks responding to the wastewater treatment plant to deal with the emergency that we had there were unable to access it going down Indian Creek. They, in one fashion or another, found their way through a back road on the neighborhood over there. Those folks indeed ran into their own challenges in places like Keller, where they were responding from. They had to drive through that area. They had to go miles around just to make it to a place where there was no water on the road. As I tried to put this on the agenda, Director Rose asked me to turn it from a general manager report to an actual possible action item. And so for that purpose, I'll turn it over to him. I understand what he's trying to accomplish here, but from the operations perspective, we did have challenges making our way to the wastewater plant in that high flow event.
The reason I ask, without the authority to put it on, I ask the general manager to put it on, coming from staff. My concern is one that we have, as a board, have the ability to discuss the event and the impact it had on the staff and on our operation and the lessons we might learn from it. And we can only deal with staff response within town. I can't go to Keller and say, look, your streets are flooding. You need to be looking or be aware of the problem or do something. I can't do that. But what we can do is I need to understand how our staff got there with Skyline flooded. Did they come back and go through Hogan's Glen, or how did they get there?
I think some of them went around Hogan's Glen. I think some of them had to turn back around like Timberline Way.
Come back up around Timberline, which crosses that same section of water. Do you know if they went through high water when they went across Timberline?
I know they
went
did
across
go
water.
through some water.
Okay. At that time, did the town have Skyline blocked?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure we've had the discussion, and I know the general manager's relayed that he's talked with the town manager about this, but I think it's important that this event and what our crew went through in order to get there is hard copy. I'm a little bit of a hard copy person from prior experience, and I think this needs to be part of the record. That, what our operations team went through within town to get there and how they did eventually get there, and that they did go through some sort of, I don't know how you define high water, whether it's 8 inches, 2 foot, or, and I'm glad we had the four-wheel drive vehicle, or exactly what it is. But I think it's important that we make that input to the town in hard copy so that it becomes a part of the record. The other thing, and I don't know whether we need board action to do that, because I can't direct, only the board could direct the general manager to make that note.
I have a quick question. Help clarify for me the purpose of the hard copy. Is it to help me understand our goal in that? I don't have a problem per se with doing it, but I
Well,
just like to
it makes it
understand.
it makes it a part of the record, permanent record, where, you know, we can talk about it and remember it. But if you make it hard copy, then it's part of the permanent record. And then the town is also looking about a possible loop road, and they're in the discussions with that. And so what we have here is a practical event that occurred that could be made as an example. Here's one example of what has occurred. But without doing hard copy, you don't have something to fall back on.
Okay, so this is to illustrate the potential or possible need for an
An-
alternative way to.
Method of access, yeah, route of access.
Okay,
Because if we get the same event or a larger event, and we're exposed, if we, you know, which is the other side of the equation, which I understand we're manning the plant now because of the rain event. Ordinarily, we don't man the plant 24 hours a day, and I'm not suggesting that we need to man the plant 24 hours a day year-round. But what I think we need to look at, it may be a general manager type call, I think we need to look at manning that plant when there's a possibility of a significant weather event because of the exposure we have out there. Strictly putting somebody in the watchtower.
yeah. I would say one of the things that we do is if we anticipate a significant weather event, we will have some employees that will stay in a hotel located close to our facility. So that may be an option to put some people up at the Hampton, which would have given them much easier access to the wastewater treatment plant if there was a need to respond. That may be a much cheaper alternative than a loop road.
Well, no,
We can get a lot of loop road.
But no, what I'm saying is, I'm not looking at, the solution we need to find is a solution that's closest to the plant, in that the fact that they had a hard time getting from Keller, we could have had somebody from staff from town who was attempting to do the same thing, have the exact same issues. The difficulty is that we can look at, and the town can look at, is the skyline, that channel that runs down under Indian Creek at Skyline, but it also is back up, it's the same channel, it's up at Timberline. It runs out of the pond in my backyard. But anyway, we need to have a situation where, and I don't know whether we're gonna put whether you'd look at putting a bunk out there or what, but we need to have a situation where if you got a big event that starts or going on, somebody needs to be, in my mind, somebody needs to be at that plant.
I have a question. If a person would have been stationed at, for example, one of the hotels on the 114th Frontal, do you think they would have encountered similar issues getting to the plant?
I think from inside Trophy Club going that way, they would have encountered the same issues.
So you think in order to avoid, how long do you think it took them to get there? How much of a delay do you think the weather, how long
I
of a
think it was a
delay?
huge delay. I would say 30, 45 minutes. I mean, they had Skyline shut down, so, of course, they waited there for a while to see if, they could get, across before they looked for alternate routes.
Are we able to estimate the potential damage that, can we attribute any difference, any additional damage or negative results that resulted from that delay?
I mean, that's hard to gauge. I would say that, some of the overflow probably could have been contained, but probably not all of it. So we're looking at a lot of SCADA data right now just to try and improve our process, and moving forward, like even Saturday, we had 2 guys on site. We knew we were gonna have a rain event. We've just had 2 people on site. Let's get ready for it. Let's, get our basins low. Let's be prepared for a huge rain event.
Okay.
Well, and the problem will be exacerbated here in the next 6, 8 months, you know, with all that construction going on in Indian Creek, and all that's gonna be
Yep.
torn up, one-way traffic, shut down. I mean, it will never be shut down, but that's gonna be, that starts next week. So you're gonna be diverted to go on Skyline to really get there anyway.
You still get to go down Skyline.
Yeah, but, I mean, we had a problem with Skyline, so I'm just saying that it's gonna get,
Indian Creek.
it potentially could get a lot worse, knowing what we know is gonna happen here.
Yeah, I mean, in that the route along the way, but the issue that I was looking at is the water flow where it crosses Indian Creek at Skyline, and then back on Timberline, which is the alternate route. You could, I don't know, Hogan's Glen also works back up in that way, if you can come back through Hogan's Glen. But I'm trying to remember back when we did that on council and developed the plan and the elevated road structure to get through Hogan's Glen. I don't know for sure that none of that flooded as it goes down
I
through.
don't know that for sure. Not. I would assume it did just because of that huge creek that's going through there. But
Yeah.
Hogan's Glen does frown on us very hard.
understand.
Heartily for driving through their
Yeah,
neighborhood.
well, this would be an emergency situation, emergency access, but it's just, you know, when we had, you know, when you had that situation and the guys got there, we'd had a sensor fail on one that I understood something shut down 20% of the plant, 20% of processing capability, and that when our guys got there, they put the plant into manual operation. Well, the sooner you get there, the sooner I mean, if you're gonna have a failure, and, you know, Murphy's Law, it's gonna happen
Most
simultaneously.
inopportune time.
Yeah, most opportune time. If you're gonna have a failure and you've gotta go into a manual mode, you're not getting to a manual mode until you've got somebody on site to do it, I believe.
It's true.
Yeah. The, I've heard that the event, the rainfall exceeded the 100-year threshold. Have we had any definitive, word on where it actually fell? I've heard it was probably closer to a 500-year event or something along those lines.
That's a Carmen swag. So let's just put it like that. We do know that September was the wettest September on record. And those 2 days, it was the wettest September on record with like 6 days left in the month. That tends to have a cumulative effect because the ground has limited absorption
to absorb,
capacity as a result of being totally wet. So, you know, we've had some questions from some of our neighbors here about stormwater events. I know Ms. Castingway met with Greg Lamont, some neighbors over here on that same weekend who were experiencing flooding coming from the cemetery. They still continue to attribute that flooding to us. I do not believe it's related to our situation, but, you know, we have a big fence over there. It is what it is. So all stormwater today, stormwater design engineers design to a 100-year statistical flood. And they just really treat anything above that as an act of God. That's what it is. So if you go over that 100-year flood, which is based on the history, you know, we expect this flood once in 100 years. Well, what if we start to see more rainfall? That becomes a moving target, and things designed in 1965 to a 100-year flood may well not be adequate today. Now, I think it's the Geological Survey and perhaps the NOAA is a part of the USGS. They're the ones who really publish those standards, and the 100-year flood, obviously here in North Texas, is very different than Salt Lake City, Utah, where I came from, one of the drier places in the country. So it's site-specific. You know, they go through that periodically, and they update their data. You know, I'm looking at the amount of 10 inches of rain in 2 days. The average rainfall in Utah is 13 inches for a year. So you look at that, it's just like a tremendous amount of water. So I don't know when they're going to update that. I'm pretty confident it was more than a 100-year event. And now that the ground is saturated, it hasn't really had a chance to dry out. Even rainfall events like the one that we've been having over the last few days can cause surface flooding.
Yeah. I have two other questions. Do we have a cost of the damages that occurred as a result of this flooding? Estimated costs, or do we have any hard numbers?
No, I mean, as far as the damage goes, it was mostly just overflow. So we had to write a report, send it to TCEQ. Now, I will add that after I did call TCEQ and report it, the next week I got a call back from them asking if this was our only overflow, if we had other overflows in the system. I was like, no, this is the only overflow we had. But it must have been such a significant event that the TCEQ guy said, okay, well, because we're being contacted by the media for all this information. So I know it was very widespread, and we are not the only
No.
plant around the area that had problems.
Somebody had a really big one, but I can't remember what the city was.
And the final question is there, I apologize, one final question. Is there anything else that we can do at the plant itself to make it more resilient?
We are implementing some of those, I guess, practices right now. So we have an empty MBR basin of 4. We're almost using that now as almost like an overflow stabilization, kind of like an equalization basin for that. We've got guys at the plant right now just because AT&T is down, in a big wide group, so we're not getting alarms. We know we're getting rain coming, so it's manned right now. And if we know that there's rain coming, there are things that we can do to get ready for a big inflow of water.
So let me say two things. One, we haven't seen any notice of violation from TCEQ or any associated fine. So that'll have an expense to it. We did have some overtime with people cleaning up associated with the event. It was a mess. Most of the mess was on our own property and in our lunchroom and in the garage. I mean, we had a mess. No doubt it was a mess. Secondly, Mike used the word equalization basin. I don't know that everyone here knows what that is, but I would tell you that I had a nominally 80 million gallon a day wastewater plant in Raleigh, and we had spent $50 million building a 40 million gallon hole in the ground. So when you have a really big surge of water coming in, you dump it in that pond, and then you pump it out slowly, run it through the treatment process in an orderly manner. In Fort Worth, they just completed a similar basin. I think that was only 50 million gallons capacity, and it had to be pumped all the way back to the plant, but it was for the same purpose, to capture these really high flow events and not disrupt the treatment process. So that's really what it is. I mean, going forward, the next time we do a kind of a master plan around the wastewater side of the system, we'll certainly want to contemplate, do we seek a way to equalize really high storm events? I would tell you that Washington, D.C., at their Blue River plant, just funded like $1 billion worth of underground tunnels to dump excess water. Now, they are combined sewer and stormwater sewer, but when they have a peak event, it's huge, and they're literally $1 billion. They're drilling tunnels to drop stormwater and sewage into during storm events, which they'll pump out when the sun is shining and run it through the plant in an orderly fashion. So it's a pretty common idea. We've used the basin that's for spare future capacity for that purpose, but we're really only talking a few 100,000 gallons. Is there space on site for such a basin? I don't know the answer to that question, but certainly something we'll consider the next time we go through a planning event.
Are there any questions?
I have one more.
Vice President Rhodes?
The other thing is the I&I involved with the event, inflow and infiltration. We processed, I think, 2 million gallons that day. 2 million gallons.
Yeah, again, I saw your note about that. I don't think we can go off of that simple equation, because we dumped a boatload of water into that basin. We spilled some. And, the way that we measure what comes in and what goes out, we actually saw the basins, say, go from 11 feet to 16. So there was a change in volume of the plant. We kind of stored it in the top of the basins until they overflowed. Then we dumped some water in the box. And, and we had a flow meter go out, so it becomes really hard to like accurately measure I&I.
Okay, but where I was going is, having watched for a couple of years now, the weekly reports, it seems to me that when we get an inch of rain, it's worth 100,000 gallons of wastewater to process. Must be through inflow rather than infiltration, would be my guess. And in this event with 10 inches, that's 1 million gallons. So my question is, do we also need to look at where we're getting this inflow from? There's two ways to look at it. Well, you can throw me all the inflow you want. I'm going to stick it in a hole in the ground over here, then I'm going to pay X number of dollars to fix it. Or I'm going to go out and I'm going to find my manholes, and the manholes that are leaking, where water's pouring into them when they get flooded around town, and do that. And that may be something that perhaps we can look at a little bit when we do the GIS and start looking at conditions, because you'd be able to look around in a manhole and say, oh, this guy's obviously 6 inches below ground level. He's going to fill up with water and run into our system. Just a thought at this point.
I will say we are being proactive in that. We do have money in the budget this year for a new camera van. I know
Yeah.
ours, one we have now, is about 16 years old, but when it was new, we actually cameraed every line in the town
Okay.
and in Westlake.
Okay, but that would be good for infiltration. But the inflow part of the equation, I think, is probably where it's showing up on the weekly reports.
Well, if we get that camera truck, though, we'll physically go out and hit every line, every manhole, and they'll
Okay.
be able to tell a lot of,
Okay.
places that,
Yeah.
could be, possibility of having some issues like that.
I suspect my neighbor has one in his backyard because he has to kind of do some sandbagging and stuff, and it was like 12 inches, 14 inches deep in the street, and it kind of runs around his house, and there's a manhole out back. So it's just one of 1275. Okay, that's it, thanks.
Okay,
Your neighbor didn't have a SSO, did he?
I don't think there was any coming up.
Over the sandbags or over the manhole?
No, out of the manhole into the, I think it was all good, I don't know. But when I drove down the street, it was deep out front of his house. And
So
going
are
our
you
house.
talking about a sewer manhole or a storm drain manhole?
I think he's got sewer out back. He also has a storm drain too. I think he's got both. But we'd have to check, but here again, it's 1 out of 1,200.
I would just make one note about that. The last SSO we had from a manhole was on Secret Court.
Straight Creek.
Straight Creek
Creek,
Court, I
yeah.
keep messing that up. So it came from the commercial complex over here, but those manholes are in people's backyards, and if you've got a little bit of seepage coming out of a manhole and 10 inches of rain, there's a good chance it won't even be noticed.
Yeah.
And so it's the only one that we're aware of that happened during the storm event, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't one out there we just were not notified about.
I'm more interested, SSO is a problem, but at this part of the discussion, I'm concerned about the water going in the top and flooding our system and flooding our processing capability at the plant.
okay, any other comments?
Thanks for the discussion.
Okay, item number 6, consider and take appropriate action regarding the following engineering matters. A, request by CPNY for additional engineering fees related to preparation of application to the Texas Commission of Environmental Control for approval for issuance of bonds by the district. B, request by CPNY for approval of Amendment 5 to the contract for professional engineering services related to wastewater treatment plant project to authorize payment of additional engineering fees for construction phase services. And C, agreement with Half and Associates, Inc. for professional engineering services to be implemented on a task order basis. Staff?
Mr. President, there are 3 contracts and/or amendments in your board packet. Let's start with the first 2, actually the first one, amendment to task order number 3. Before I came, so I want to say that's July of 2017, our board approved a task order under a master service agreement with CPNY to complete a application to TCEQ for the money to build the 18-inch interconnecting pipeline. It was a task order for $9,500. In the interim, the staff has asked to add the costs of the wastewater plant overrun to the TCEQ application, and in addition to that, we have changed engineers and had half do the design work on that interconnecting pipeline, leading to a higher dollar amount for the amount we're asking TCEQ to approve. So the amendment for task order 1 is proposed to go from $9,500 to $20,000. I've asked around a little bit, and $20,000 seems to be more in keeping with what an actual cost of doing that work is. That said, the board approved the $9,500 before I came. So the work has been completed. TCEQ is reviewing our proposal right now, and CPNY has submitted a amendment to task order number 3, raising the dollar amount to $20,000. Also, before I came, although it was approved in August, I believe, of 2017, CPNY proffered up amendment number 4 to what started as the Wallace contract and later became the CPNY contract through acquisitions of CPNY purchased Wallace Engineering for the completion of engineering, design, and construction phase services for the wastewater treatment plant. We are aware that our contractor is nearly a year over schedule, and back in that August 2017 timeframe, our board approved amendment number 4 for, and Stephen will have to help me with this, $332,000 and change to the original engineering fee. We've known for some time that there would be additional costs because that original was intended to get us through the end of March of this year for construction phase services provided by the engineer. So inspection, design review, those kind of aspects of what CPNY does. I've worked closely with CPNY, and I believe they've done a good job of stretching out that 332 that was originally intended to get us through the end of March. If you go back and look at the minutes of that meeting, that's what it was intended to do. One of the net results of that is we've not had full-time inspection or engineering services on the plant side over the last several months. I'm just trying to bring that, milk that change order for all we can get out of it. We're nearing the end of the contract. The contractor has submitted a substantial completion request for the entire project. It's under review right now. It's not clear that it's going to happen this time, but it certainly could happen in the next few weeks.
Are we still 2 weeks away?
Well, I know we're less than a year away.
I was just checking.
Okay. Nonetheless, the staff is feeling pretty good about it. Like we're to that place. We've got a lot of punch list items to pound through, but at this point, all the contractor trailers have moved off site. We are down to that place. We've got a few significant outstanding issues to go. The second item here is addendum number 5, which was $90,000 and change. It's not clear that they will need all of that, but I asked him to give me a fee that he felt would get us completely through the end of the project, so I would not be in front of the board advocating for addendum number 6. And finally, Half & Associates Master Engineering Contract. One of the aspects of the wastewater plant, which was not included in the design or construction contract, was the in-plant water system. Our in-plant water system basically takes effluent water that otherwise would be sent to the creek or to lakes A and B at Trophy Club Country Club and uses it for in-plant purposes like washing screens, washing bar racks, as a spray on our sludge belt press. That facility I think probably dates back to the origin of the plant. But basically, if any of you have ever lived in a place that has a well, it has a pressure tank You pump against that pressure tank, keeps pressure on an implant loop system, and then as water comes on, the pump comes on and pumps it back up to pressure. It's failed. It's failed on several occasions, and in the most recent case, one of the lines on that loop broke underneath one of our brand-new roads, causing a great deal of erosion. Fortunately, there's no apparent structural damage to that road. We paid a different contractor to come in and bore a new line under that road with a casing, just in an effort to keep our change orders to a minimum on our current contractor's effort. The current estimate that we have for upgrading that system, which definitely needs to be done, because right now we're using potable water in its stead, was exceeded the $75,000 number. So as I look at it, our board has selected 2 engineering firms, CP&Y and Half & Associates. Half & Associates does not have what I call a master service agreement. So what you see in front of you is a master service agreement. I have a task order sitting on my desk, which would be the first one to go against this contract for the bid documents to put that facility out to bid. That's signing that contract, since it's a budgeted element. We've got $100,000 in this year's budget for it. Would be within my expenditure authority, but I cannot approve a contract such as this. So these are the 3 things that are for consideration under item number 6.
Okay.
Carmen, if I may, Mr. President, back to item B, you mentioned that you're seeking $90,000, is that the number? But then I also heard you say something that it up to $90,000 with the hope that it wouldn't be quite 90,000?
Yes,
So I guess,
it's
so what I'm,
It's $96,625. It's item 60. in the
Page
packet.
60.
okay,
Page 6, I'm sorry. Page 60.
okay. Well, I guess my question is, what if it's not $96,000? Are we saying up to, or are we approving that amount?
Sure. They only bill us for hours worked. So if we get it done and they're done at 45,000, then that's what we pay.
How long that 2 weeks takes?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
The 2 weeks that's been going on, a year and a half.
I hope when the doctor tells me I got 2 weeks to live, I hope he'll remember this experience.
We'll have Carmen step in as the physician when your end of life statement is
Dr.
up.
Carmen.
Since the right side of this table's occupied all the questions, we'll give the left side time to get their questions in before they forget them. Director Casper?
I don't have any questions.
I know Director Rose has questions. Please proceed.
You saw some yellow on my page,
Yes, I
obviously.
did.
Okay. I don't really have anything. I think I'm probably going to need 3 motions here. I don't have anything on Amendment Task Order 3, nor do I have anything on Amendment Task Order 5. The contract agreement for half, I have a couple of questions. I'm on page 61. And I'm on 3, compensation of engineer. And it says the hourly rate will be labor costs times 2.3 multiplier. Somebody needs to explain that to me, please.
Okay, so it's pretty common in engineering circles that we calculate the loaded rate of an individual. Let's say it's the construction inspector for Half & Associates, and their hourly rate is $47.50, and there's 20% benefits that go on top of that. Then the multiplier is used to scale it up to include the overhead of the firm.
Normally, you don't see that number. Normally, just charge you $150 an hour
Right. Or 200,
or $200.
but not, 85.
Okay, so is a 2.3 multiplier negotiable and standard within the industry, would you say, or?
Director Rose, when I was at CH2M Hill, we charged 3.17.
Okay, that answers that question.
And Lori may be able to help me out on this too. So when we went out and the board approved half of an engineer, we did an RFP for that, didn't we?
I think
It was already approved by the board. So I don't think this is gonna change what you've already approved.
Okay.
I think this is just,
Memorializing and
Okay. Okay, the next thing I have is it talks about,
Can I add one more thing
Sure.
before you move on? One thing you do see at times is if, let's say we have a project engineering team, and included in that overhead multiplier includes their office space, their copiers, all of that sort of stuff. If it was a big on-site project, let's say we're at the airport, where they had construction trailers, the engineers were housed there, that number gets reduced because the project is providing those overhead costs directly.
okay. Also in that same paragraph, it talks about hourly rates per position is reflected in Exhibit A.
Yeah.
And it talks about Exhibit B, unit pricing schedule. Those exhibits were not included in the package.
yeah, I had the same comment. It references Exhibit A and B, but I didn't see them.
That's probably my mistake.
While Carmen looks for those, Tony, I'm assuming you've had the opportunity to review this and you're comfortable with all the terms and conditions contained within?
Yeah, we previously discussed this and communicated my comments. And what Carmen sent to me did include the schedule, so it didn't make the packet, but,
Okay.
but we have those. I know it's apples and oranges, but in terms of in the law firm, so other types of professional services, that would be a very reasonable multiplier for what you'd expect for staff, for
Okay.
paralegals and legal assistants and things like that.
Okay. While the GM continues the search here, down on page 62 talks about insurance, says the limits of liability shall be $1 million per claim in the aggregate. Is that a reasonable and suitable number? It's item 9, IX insurance on page 62.
Roman numeral 9.
Roman numeral 9.
I think that's a hard answer because we don't know yet what the individual task will be. From a generic perspective, I think it is reasonable. I would
Okay.
expect if there was a very large project in a task, that's something that we would revisit. But in terms of a default for task orders are typically smaller engineering
Yes.
projects as opposed to a new wastewater treatment
Yeah.
plant. So for what you expect to see in these types of tasks, that would be a reasonable sum.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question or a comment. We will typically put a minimal rating requirement, like S&P AA or something, to indicate a quality of the company that's providing the liability insurance, and then requests to be a additional insured on it for certain types of projects, or at least to, so that way, in the event the policy ever lapse, we're notified so we know that the policy is no longer in force. Were there ever any considerations to take those steps to ensure that this is in place throughout the duration of the agreement?
Typically, we do that when it's a actually construction project where you retain a separate engineer. So for your wastewater treatment plant project or this type of contract, well, this contract is intended to call up the engineer with a very small question where they spend 0.6 hours or an hour and a half. So this is really just incidental engineering services as opposed to the large construction and engineering project that I think you're contemplating, where you very much would want to be an additional insured. This is for your staff to have the ability to ask an engineering question of your engineer, and for something like that, you wouldn't typically see that.
Yeah, I think given that the only thing that I would, and I don't know how we memorialize this, but I've seen instances, and not within the mud, but just in my professional career, where agreement was signed with the intention to do A and B developed at some point in the future, and the agreement was never reviewed prior to that action being taken. And you end up having a agreement that was inconsistent with the work that was being performed. And so I guess my question is, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but we need to guard against that occurring.
Mr. President, I would say that I see this very much like what Tony described. This is for miscellaneous small stuff. I feel like if it gets out of really my purchasing authority, which is 25,000, that probably ought to go out for either a proposal or it's going to come to you for a procurement in any event. So any sort of engineering work that's 25,000 or less, I wouldn't want to bet millions of dollars on.
Yeah. Okay.
And in addition, I've sent you all a copy of those rate schedules. I apologize for not getting those to Lori.
That would mean I'd have to learn to do email setting at the dais. So let me ask you a quick question. You clearly have reviewed them, looked at them. I'm going to put you, the GM on the box and say,
Is it possible?
sometimes I have to, I'll
Thank
trust you.
Appreciate it.
Are those rates all within what you would consider reasonable bounds?
Yes, sir, they are.
Thank you.
Well, if there are there any other questions or comments, we can address A and B if there aren't any questions or comments there. And, well, she has the schedule. My goodness.
Probably could. That would mean doing it.
You just happen to have those in your purse?
What?
Those copies.
See if you have it.
I had that, I printed them right to the door.
Oh, okay.
You think so?
Not yet. That's okay. Thank you. Scientist.
Thank you, Lori.
Okay, so these are with a range. Okay. Hadn't expected that.
We try to find the right talent for the right job. So I would tell you that tonight I insisted that Leah come and give the presentation. She has a boss, and he's been here many times. Has a good, solid character, but we picked half to do this work based on her resume. And I wanted her here to give the presentation, which has an impact on the hourly rate.
Yeah. Less than the boss.
Administrative 5. From $76 on the low side to $350 on the high side.
Which one?
Administrative 5.
Yeah, that's a big number. Big
Yeah.
font.
They are
That's
what
the
they are.
highest, that's
Yeah,
the highest one
well.
on the page. Even more than a specialist, that's it. Well, no, it's not. Here's 350,
Yeah, the
scientist.
scientist, which would make sense.
Okay.
Well, okay.
And in connection with each task order, it's perfectly acceptable for your GM to state, we're gonna have a not to exceed in connection with this, and depending on the task, I would expect that.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion if
Okay, let's see.
there's a desire.
I move to approve the amendment to task order number 3 with CP&Y to adjust the task order amount to not greater than $20,500.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice President Rose to approve amendment to task order number 3 to a not to exceed amount of $20,500 for additional service for the bond application to TCEQ.
This is 6A we're talking about, correct?
It is 6A, that is
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Second.
Okay, We have a second by Secretary Treasurer Flynn. Are there any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes unanimously.
It's the left side's turn.
I make a motion that we approve 6B, request for CPNY approval amendment, number 5, contract engineering services, wastewater treatment plant project. I don't know if it's exactly 90,000 of what the amount was.
$96,625.
96,625,
Not to exceed?
not to exceed 96,625 for additional engineering fees for construction phase services.
We have a motion by Secretary Treasurer Flynn to approve the Addendum 5, the additional engineering construction fee not to exceed $96,625 for additional engineering construction services for CPNY related to the wastewater treatment plant. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Director Castaway. Any other questions or comments? Vice President Rose?
I don't believe this amount was budgeted. Would that be correct?
Yes, sir. It will be a part of the total project overrun. We're now spending from reserves for both contractor and engineer costs associated with the project. We believe that we're in that ballpark of where we need to be. But we're down to the cleanup phase. I guess that's probably the best way to say it.
My
2
po-
weeks.
yeah, My point was is that the funding's gonna come from reserves.
Yeah, it's not budgeted. This is something
Yeah,
that's going to be
okay.
additional. It's going to be added to what we've already been put out to do from the MUD to 517 fund.
Ultimately, to be reimbursed to ourselves under a future bond issue.
That's correct.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Vice President Rose?
Nope, thank you.
Okay. Seeing or hearing no other, I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes unanimously.
Three on this side. Move to approve agreement with Half Associates Incorporated for professional engineering services to be implemented on a task order basis.
Okay, I have a motion by Vice President Rose to approve the agreement with Half Associates for professional engineering services to be implemented on a task order basis. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion was seconded by Director Chapman. Any other questions or comments? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, item number 7, consider and take appropriate action regarding the September 2018 combined financials and variance report. Secretary Treasurer Flynn?
Let's start with the combined financials. Obviously, in your packet, you have the detail. I think it's starting on, I did a little bit bigger font, so mine is page 72, but the general fund is the one I really want to focus on. We had an amendment, I wasn't here last meeting, but it was approved from 10,250 to 11,1. There was a little variance. So high level, if you look at the entire report, revenues were down about 8%, almost all on the water side, which equated to $844,000. That's the bad news side of the story from a revenue standpoint. However, expenses were down significantly more. In aggregate, about 2.6 million down. So when you kind of total it all out, it leaves a net of about 1.7 million to the good. We're down 844 on revenues, up, or down on at expenses, 2.6 million. So as we stand today, all the dust hasn't quite settled yet. I met with Stephen today. We are close to getting everything done for September, final fiscal year end. All that is left outstanding, as I understand it, Stephen, is we have a true-up with Fort Worth yet to happen. Two things. We have September water charges, which hasn't hit the books yet, which is probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 250,000 ballpark. And the true-up, which is kind of a roll of the dice, but could be somewhere, maybe a couple $100,000 more, we're guessing. So if you add all those up, even if it was $500,000, the 250, we're still going to be north of $1 million.
1.2 added to the fund balance.
1.2, that's exactly right,
1.2 to the net.
to the net.
Good.
Did you have any additional commentary?
Yeah, so there might have been some confusion, with this. If anybody else took a look at the variance report, look at everything here, we did do an amendment this last meeting. It has been updated on here. The big difference on here, especially the revenue side, was, as I stated before, that $790,796 that came in from the TWBD SWIFT loan that we had. Showed that as a revenue source. So that's kind of where the difference really came across. It's more just moving money around. It kind of looks like it on the books here, but I had to show it as a revenue because it is something we weren't expecting to get this fiscal year. That's what's on there. But as Director Flynn was talking about there is we're looking roughly, once Fort Worth comes in, that's probably the biggest amount that's still remaining out there. We'll still get invoices in for the next 3 weeks. I won't be able to close everything out yet for a little while. I know CPNY is one of them that we're still going to be getting in. There's a couple different things that's still going to come in project-wise. But yeah, we're roughly looking about 1.2, 1.3 surplus this year. That is with everything there. Now, obviously, we've spent some of the money out for the wastewater treatment plant overrun and stuff like that. So, but that's overall it looks good. I mean, we're a little bit lower in revenue than we wanted. We started out this year pretty slow on the water side. We caught up, which is fairly good. Still a little bit low, which also means that the expenses for water also go down in relation. But the truth comes out is we didn't get everything done that we wanted to this year. Been a busy year, short staff, everything kind of going on, so it kind of forced our expenses to be a little bit lower. So we do want to try to work on this year, getting things caught up and getting everything taken care of this year. But as far as the reserve side of it, we will have a little bit extra reserves closing the year, as we talked about last meeting.
I want to thank staff for doing an outstanding job working under the gun, short-staffed, as you have. You've done well, real well. Thank you.
Yeah, I only had one question I noticed, and I don't know why it popped out on me on page 123.
Yes.
We're in wastewater.
It lines up until the very last line. There's like a
10.
$10,000
variance there that just doesn't seem to, I can't track where it came from.
Yeah,
123?
671, 726.04, and then when you get to the very end, it's 681, 074.20.
With the current month being the identical all the way down the line, it's not quite sure what happened there.
It's the
We
tax
need
bond,
to go back
wastewater
up.
tree tax bond.
Might be
Well, you talking about the interest on line up for the 9348?
I was gonna ask, is it related to the interest right above, the interest
You've got
income?
interest in go to the page before that, 122. You show the interest. This is only for the 517 fund. Only thing that's happened is we changed money out from the general fund to cover the wastewater side, but there's a $9,000 interest in there, and that's what that is.
Okay.
It's a revenue source that we can't quite budget, but it comes across as interest, so that's what that is, your revenue source coming year to date at 9,300, or 9,348.
Okay. That's fine. I mean, that's my question. I couldn't quite figure out where the math came from, but I can see it.
Yeah, it's kind of weird the way the SCW breaks the page up, but that's your revenues. You got your expenses on this side, the revenue on the other side. That's why it kind of broke it up the way it did.
I was also pleased to see the dumpster costs didn't go any further over than what we budgeted.
That started off pretty high, right out of the box,
I'm
right?
concerned about that. There were a few other items that I went through that looked like that the funds were not used, that caught me by surprise throughout the year. We'd budgeted for some items and they show that they weren't expended, so I would imagine that they were budgeted for the same level this year, so.
Yeah,
Actually, some of them are probably a carryover.
Yeah, I'm a strong proponent of staff training and using those funds.
Yeah, we, and Mike and I have talked, we sat down, sitting there with Carmen, we talked about some of the expenses that we've wanted to use this year, that we didn't have the time to do, the manpower to do, we kind of had to prioritize what got done at what times. But we looked at the budget, when we did the budget for this fiscal year 19, we looked at some of the expenses that weren't spent that we are now going to move up on the docket to spend and do it this fiscal year coming up.
Yep.
And we did improve training, as you talked about. We do want to focus on training this year.
Yep.
Being short staff is tough to have somebody out for 3 days for training or 2 days for training. But it's something that we are going to try to focus on, especially with the new wastewater, superintendent. I got a new staff account. There's things that we want to get them through the loop and get them going.
Okay.
So we are going to try to utilize everything to get more training.
So
done.
we're going to be looking at backfilling Frank.
Yes.
Okay.
And we will be hopefully try to get a lot of training in this year, just because we have a brand new wastewater plant with brand new technology, and everybody would like to learn as much as they can about it.
Okay, and the recent, well, I'd probably be off topic, but the recent inspection of the water plant went well,
Yes.
so I appreciate your work there. Yeah, upcoming, okay, I'm off topic.
Stephen, we've had Frank's old open position on the street for a while now.
Yes, so we are now, I want to say we're 6 weeks in right now with that position being open. We just rolled over that the online posting now again. We do have a couple interviews scheduled for this week. We'll get together on that and discuss that tomorrow morning. So we do have a few candidates out there, but we are openly looking. We will technically have 2 positions that are open. We can get by with 1 for the time being, but we are ultimately trying to fill 2 positions out there.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment on the variance report, if you want to move that one. Any other questions on the regular budget, or we move on? Okay, so the variance report, not a lot jumps out if you look at it. It's on roughly, again, mine's a little bit different, page 155, 150, something around there.
154,
Obviously, the biggest one is, we've already talked about that, the revenues on the water, down 8%. As I looked, kind of expenses in each area, water, vehicle maintenance is percentage-wise 30%, got to replace that vehicle. We already took care of that, I guess. Lab expenses were up quite a bit, and we kind of know why that was. Schools and training, we talked about the need for more of that, but at least in the water side, a little bit over there. But again, these are small dollar amounts. I mean, percentages show something, but it's the rounding error at the end of the day. Wastewater, there was a few different areas there. Obviously, overtime with some of the issues we've had. That's expected. Medical insurance, Stephen, you can talk a little bit about that, but that was kind of hit each area, right? From
You talking about the medical or the insurance for the team out?
medical and wastewater, up, roughly 6%, something like that.
Oh, that has to do with people change. So when you change positions, we budget based on what we think is going to be there when people change. If we didn't have actually an open position there at the time, so when somebody changes, they change their medical plan. So you could have one that's fully funded by the MUD, and then all of a sudden they get a family plan. It's 50% difference. We pay, MUD pays for the extra 50% of that family. So these things kind of change. When we do our budgeting, we can say, okay, we're going to have 7 positions out there. Well, they're already filled, so we're going to go off of what those 7 positions are using. Things change. Staff moves around, and then that also changes the insurance.
Bill, I think you brought up dumpster services. That was,
Yeah.
it ended up 113%, 13% over budget, but it was tracking a lot worse than that earlier in the year.
Yeah.
So I think we ended up in a pretty good place there. Again, some more money in lab supplies. Nothing really under board of directors or admin. Not a lot there.
I have a question on admin, just to make me smart again, because I know I've been briefed on it once before. The insurance, TML WC true-up adjustment.
So this is something I talked with Director Flynn with this morning. So every year, just like any other audit, we get a true-up audit. TML comes in and does our work comp is what that's for.
Okay, work comp.
The big thing that happened this year versus the prior years is before we have there's a risk factor. Each job has its own risk for work comp. As an admin, let's say we're 0.5% of risk, because worst case we're going to stump our toe on a step or whatever happens there. But we have a risk factor. Let's say that the water guys are at 6.5, Wastewater guys are actually a little bit lower. Let's say they're at 5.5. Well, now we had it this year, actually last year, we put in effect that we're doing a blend system since we are cross-training and we have both staff. There's a blend risk factor now for someone who does water and wastewater.
Okay.
So because of the way our true-up worked, we have more wastewater guys than we do water. So when the rate goes up as a blend, we've now had, so everybody, the seven, say there's 7 guys on the wastewater side, they've all come up now to higher risk, which means
Okay.
more money out of our pocket for the work comp. So when
Okay.
we did the true-up, that put us a little bit over.
Okay.
We're gonna do a true-up again. I think I'll probably set it around December. I try to get it just outside of our audit. And I think this year we're actually gonna get a refund back, because of the short staff. So we have less salaries. You're paying work comp based on the salaries.
Okay,
So
thank you.
it goes both ways each year.
Well, in addition, we've ramped up safety efforts.
That too.
Yes.
The posters.
I guess the last comment I've had, legal expenses up a little bit. I think we know why there with some of the issues we faced this year from the legal front, so not unexpected. All in all, thank you, Tony, thank you.
Tony would like to go on record, they were not
We love
related to
Tony
him.
about 4%, but it came out 8. There you go.
the money.
Yeah, it's okay. We're gonna get you some hip waders for your next trip up.
I too would like to compliment Stephen. He's really put in a lot of hard work on the whole budget and making sure that we're doing things above board. 100% transparency in everything we do. Not saying that wasn't done in the past, but it's easier
Yep.
to understand it for us as a board, and more importantly, to explain it to our next door neighbor.
Appreciate it. I do want to say that, I recommend the staff, though. I mean, the budget it's a team event. I mean, every department stepped in and helped out. So, I mean, it comes from Mike, Lori, the UB ladies. I mean, everybody's really stepped up and really helped out. Desiree, my new staff accountant. So, it's been a tough year. We're glad that it's over with now, and we're ready to start this new year and kind of push forward going there. Something I do want to kind of address, if the board doesn't mind, is going forward. We've all talked about the financials. I want to make this something I want to change the financials and make it something that the board understands going forward. Not just do it because we've done it because prior boards agreed on that's how they wanted it done. So something I do want to get with, I'll get with Director Flynn here, or as the time goes along. There's some stuff here that are we gonna do we want the time to go over $500 sorry, go over $500 and put this on the report here versus taking it off, or do we how open, how much do we want to see all this kind of stuff, and something I want to do. All the time that's being put into reports, I want to make sure that everybody understands them, and if they're not understandable, then I don't feel like I'm kind of wasting the time. Let's get them designed so everybody can understand what we're looking at here, and maybe simplify this down from 100 pages down to something that's a little more easy to read, and so we'll kind of go with that going forward.
I would say I would welcome those efforts. I really don't need to see a $20 overage on the amount of toner cartridges that were used. It's, we could definitely go without as detailed reports.
I don't know which one of the green and white pages groups I can do without, but I think I could
We'll
probably
give
do
you a
without.
recommendation on that, Mr. Director Rose.
Thank you. Probably do without one. of them
Recommendation.
anyway.
Think of it in the 85 to 90% cut factor, and then you'll be.
Yeah, gotcha.
Is there any other questions or comments on the financial variance reports?
I move to approve the financial and variance reports. Stole the treasurer's line.
We have a motion by Vice President Rose to approve the 2018 combined financial and variance reports. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Director Castaway. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Now we have reports and updates.
Mr. President, I would point you to the general manager's report in the board packet, and I would also note that the first item under regulatory updates has already been posted on the town is it Trophy Club Mud Taxpayers Facebook page, as pointed out by Director Chapman. I appreciate the heads up, so somebody has witnessed that and reposted it.
It's more of an anti-mud Yeah.
Is
you've
it?
seen
I have
it.
noticed.
Yeah, someone got a hold of it and posted it, and only part of it. They only did like the first page. They didn't do any of the other.
Is it, you put it on our website, right? I mean, in,
think they-
parts-
It's in the board packet, so if somebody just clipped it out and.
oh,
Yeah, there's a
but I mean,
Facebook page.
we file that on the website, right?
Oh, it's
Taxpayers,
publicly
mud
available, but.
taxpayers.
Yeah.
It's a page called Mud Taxpayers. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to thank the citizens for participating in our communication efforts.
That's right.
You know, the only thing is they came out faster than we actually got the packet practically.
So I
That's
do
good.
appreciate the heads up. I am not a Facebooker, so I do appreciate the heads
Didn't
up.
know if site existed.
I didn't either.
I really don't have a whole lot to talk about in terms of what's in the packet, but I do have a couple of just comments in general. I noted that phase one of our project, the interconnecting pipeline, is complete. We have not, we know that La Banda, our contractor, is a month over their completion date for the project. They have not come back and dealt with their punch list items, which include revegetation of the easement here behind the church, completion of some sprinkler lines over here in the parking lot, things like that. We have been working with our engineer to try to press them to get it done. So that's still outstanding. We saw a presentation on phase two of the interconnect pipeline. So nothing more to report there. Mike and our project inspector at the wastewater treatment plant did walk through the punch list with Huevo Cadagua. And I think we're getting closer there. I'm actually optimistic that it's not going to be 2 weeks, Mr. President, but we are getting down to where they have a legitimate shot at substantial completion, which changes a few things, one of which is when the warranty date on some of these items starts.
Do you anticipate that substantial completion occurring prior to our next meeting? Is that, if you had to give a percentage of likelihood of that occurring, what would you anticipate that being?
I'd give it a 51%.
51%.
I was hoping for 62.3.
Up there on the limb.
Yeah, I also picked the Utah Jazz and Toronto Raptors for the NBA Finals, so,
So we know not to give it very much weight.
well, we'll live with it as we find it. On the high service pump project, Mike has reviewed the adjustments to the final electrical plans and should be going to bid very soon. It's a project that has to be done during the low flow part of the year. And then finally on the joint projects, I note that Directors Castingway and Flynn attended a town hall meeting with the town on these joint projects. There were some challenges with the Phoenix part of the Phoenix and Indian Creek joint project. There was a pretty good turnout there. I didn't hear one single comment about the water side of the project. It was all related to construction phase impacts to citizens and stormwater. And those were the pieces that I heard and saw. So they're getting ready to move forward on that. If you'll all recall, the water pipe as a portion of the overall Indian Creek project it's probably less than half of the total linear feet, or somewhere in that ballpark. Our pipe is not the whole length of the Indian Creek job. So, let's see, what else did I have to add?
Just happens to be the one with 5 trees.
What was that?
Just happens to be the section with 4 or 5 trees.
The lady with most trees in her yard was there,
Yes, she
Good.
was.
and she didn't have any comments about the water pipe and the impact, but certainly was, I think, concerned about traffic routing around the Indian Creek road blockages through I'm going to forget the name of the road that kind of goes to I think that's to the north, kind of loops around and comes back out on Indian Creek.
Oh, they're gonna reroute the whole
Fair
traffic?
Well, people are
Or-
concerned that people will just take that route.
I think it's
Oh.
Phoenix Drive.
Oh, yeah.
Fairgreen.
The
Fairgreen.
Fairgreen, right.
Down and around.
With that, Mr. President, I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have about my report. Oh, maybe let me add one more thing. We did have some leakage in the boardroom. You can see the tile right back there.
Yep.
During the big event a couple weeks ago, we had panels fall out of the ceiling with soggy insulation. Mike had some folks come in and take a look at it. They felt like they had fixed the problem, but maybe they only fixed part of the problem. We have them coming back out to do some more remedial work in the next few weeks. The building's getting old and needs some work, so.
We've had consistent issues with our internet service. Do you anticipate, and I didn't hear you mention it under the joint projects, do you anticipate the joint project we have with the town and getting new internet service out to the wastewater treatment plant will resolve those issues?
I believe it will resolve part of the issues. So our current internet service provider there is AT&T. And it's my understanding that our internet service provider here at the district office is Spectrum. So that would effectively be an internal for us, because we would put it on our own repeaters and not really share the repeaters that the town is putting in, but on the same tower. That would enable us to get, data, including alarms, back here to the office on an internal network. Routing them back out to cell phones for people on call becomes part of that question. So we have had those consistent issues. The last I heard, the town has put their project on hold for a little while, and I'm not exactly sure why, but kind of came to a screeching halt. I think someone suggested an alternative, and they asked the staff to go out and evaluate that. I think I heard that third person. I think we're ready to go. We're budgeted and ready to move on that project. I'm excited about it, but for some reason the town has met a delay.
Most of a big majority of our issues out there was a line issue, where it was located, being cut by trucks and contractors and whatever else is out there, squirrels, rabbits, whatever is out there cutting lines. So that has been since been fixed. Mike's been on top of that with AT&T, getting that fixed, got the line moved, got it partially buried, and then it comes back on the backside, I believe. So
Fully
it's
buried, and it runs outside of the fence now, so unless the contractor's out digging between the trees between us and the golf course, they shouldn't hit it. But it does take about 2 to 3 weeks to get AT&T to respond to anything.
yeah, we have. We've had they've had some turnovers. We've had some account managers come and go, so it's kind of a coin toss on who I want to talk to and try to get that implemented. We have tried to. We are now labeled as a different account, which should have been labeled before. Something on their end, not doing it, but something where they go and expedite to get us out there quicker. They have a term for us, a GEMS or whatever they call us. But even expedited service is like 2 weeks before we get somebody out there, so it's kind of interesting. We do have AT&T out here on the water side too, which we've had issues time here and there. But we do have Spectrum here, and I think AT&T was down in multiple people today. And they had issues across the board.
Yeah,
So
More than just this, it's actually regional.
Yeah, it was up and down the East Coast as well.
Yeah,
It was a major outage.
It's a big one.
but we really don't have another option out there as far as anything else because of where we're at. The plant.
Any other questions or comments on the general manager's report? Staff? Lori? Mike? Any comments?
I would just like to say that we've had a pretty good year, and I know we have been short, but staffing wise, for all the guys that are out there pounding the pavement every day, they've been doing a great job. Keeping up.
Yeah, I think staff has done a great job. From Mike, Lori kind of running the administrative part, Stephen the financial side of the house, and Carmen kind of leading the group. It's been a interesting, challenging year, but
We survived it.
other than that estimate of 2 weeks on the wastewater treatment plant completion, I've been very happy.
I did not make that estimate.
No, but it will live with you forever.
I'm going kinda good leader, well done.
Hey, no quarter.
Kinda good leadership.
Anybody can miss the plant 2 weeks, and it's now 8 months. I think that's a notch on this record. Have to check out your estimating skills.
I did not make that estimate.
Nobody told me to wear armor to come to the meeting tonight. It's like, come on. Okay.
Okay.
Bulletproof vest.
Do we have any executive session items we need to cover?
Mr. President, I have a freshly stocked bowl of candy on the executive session desk, carefully stacked in such a way that if you pulled one thing out, it's going to fall. And yet, for all my effort, I have nothing for executive session.
Well, that will not prevent us from going back after the meeting is over into your office to discuss other unrelated tangential items. But we do need to make sure that Tony can get his chopper back to Austin in time for servicing. His boat. You took your boat here. Brutal. Okay, so if there's no executive session item, we'll go down to item number 11. Since there was no executive session item, there's nothing to consider that occurred in executive session. Items for future agendas. Item number 12, anything of note? Hearing none. Consider and take appropriate action regarding rescheduling November, December meeting dates.
Mr. President, the staff would like to move the meeting, which is currently on the third Monday of November, the date is eluding me, to November 26th, which is
The third Monday is the 19th.
The 19th, thank you. November 26th, the Monday after the Thanksgiving holiday. I did send out an email canvassing the board, and I got 3 responses, all of which were positive regarding that. But, you know, times change and people have other things show up on their schedule, so.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's may not be an issue, but I've got a audit from our boys out of Washington DC Federal that's coming in on the 26th and 27th of November. So that will be a game time decision, but we have more than capable vice president here. So if it had to begin without me, then I feel the board is in good hands, or the best hands we could get on short notice.
Sometimes it's best not to remember.
You give me your toys, I'll give you my armor.
And was there a December discussion?
Is there a date on December?
December is on the agenda, but Lori, I honestly can't remember why we put that in the agenda language. Were we contemplating asking the board to change that?
Since it is a holiday, just wanted to check with everybody and see if we needed to move it.
So it's the 17th, correct?
17th, correct.
Good with me?
Any?
Bocce will be over by then.
So November is the 26th now.
Yes.
Yes.
The board has to take an action to do that?
But I just want to make sure that's what we're saying.
Change mine.
Greg's statement.
Now, I would say this, once the board changes the meeting to November 26th, which I believe takes an action of the board, that puts between this meeting and that one 45 days. The staff has 3 items that were not ready for prime time today, but we're hoping to have ready and are contemplating calling maybe a 3, maybe at the most 4 agenda item interim meeting, maybe the week of November the 5th. The items that we'd be considering and hoping to consider include a easement abandonment in the Solana area. It's just a small easement, kind of, I guess, between the health club and the Entrada development on what would be the south side of Solana Boulevard. Tony and I and the developer have been working on that for some time now. It wasn't ready for prime time yet. We've had a demonstration of a camera van. There's the possibility of actually purchasing the demo unit at a discount. It was a very attractive possibility. If we can get that in place, we're interested in doing that. And one more, Mike, what was the other one? It's
To be disclosed at a future time.
oh, we sent out for quotes from some other people just this week.
Oh, yes, for SCADA upgrades.
SCADA upgrade. So we've got money in the budget for wastewater lift station upgrades. Again, it's going to be like lift station number 2. out there on TW King Road, right? Where we have like a SCADA element, which we don't want to let it, just anybody bid, a low bidder work on our SCADA systems. That's not something we want to do. But then there's a electrical component upgrade that goes along with it. It was going to exceed on at least one of those lift stations my purchasing authority. So to put them all together, we need to bring that to the board for consideration. We've gone out and asked for some quotes to stay within state procurement law. And so it'd be like 3 items like that. Hopefully we could just have a 20, 30-minute board meeting and pound it out somewhere between now and late November.
I'll need a quick agenda item also, which we talked about. I'll need one too. We talked about moving the savings account over to a money market. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
So that'd be a quick one in there.
Okay.
If it is the week of the 5th, I'm out all week traveling, world traveler.
Yeah, and I'm out October 29th and 30th, and possibly the second week in November as well. But again, if we,
I don't know, if we can pass a budget with 3 directors, it's kind of like, could we just,
That was our hope, was that we could just, have one that didn't interfere with anybody's schedule. We are getting to the holidays, but since it is 45 days between meetings, maybe we could just get some folks, hopefully they would be non-controversial items, and it's just a matter of they require board approval.
okay, I'll consider a motion for item number 13. I think we need one for the November meeting date change.
I move to move the November meeting date to Monday, the 26th.
We have a
Second.
Motion by Vice President Rose to move our November scheduled meeting from the 3rd Monday, November 19th, to the 4th Monday, November 26th. It was seconded by Secretary Treasurer Flynn. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes unanimously. I'll entertain a
Before you do
motion
that,
to-
I would like to bring back item 5 just momentarily. Item 5 was the action on the wastewater plant. I was just wondering whether the board wanted the general manager to write the letter to the town manager detailing the difficulty in getting to the plant during the rain event. If so, we need to either have a consensus or a motion.
I have no issue with it.
Would-
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Would you like, okay, I move that the general manager write a letter to the town manager detailing the difficulties of the staff in making it to the wastewater treatment plant during the rain event, and that it would be, that the discussion be limited to occurrences within the town.
We have a motion by Vice President Rose to have the general manager write a letter to the town manager indicating the difficulties that MUD staff had arriving at the wastewater treatment plant during the latest flood event for in-town employees only.
Well,
Second.
Yeah, just,
Yeah.
just that there are difficulties within the town.
Within the town.
Within the town.
Did I hear a second by
Yes.
Director Chapman? It was seconded. Any other discussion? Hear none, all in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes unanimously. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, it's online, you'll see it.
Pass. We are now adjourned at 8:30 PM.
Mr. President, we'll open the door, and if you'd like some candy, it'd be
Yes.
great. Now, Steve's got some stashed in the freezer.
I got in the
His
freezer.
favorite is the Kit Kats in the freezer, so.